Friends, welcome to my channel. Before listening to this story, I will ask you to like and subscribe. It's not difficult for you, but it's nice for me, and we're starting. Why do all these stories about cheating on your wife sound so corny? The same old hackneyed move. I came home early, found the letter, caught her and her lover at the Christmas party at the office, just happened to drive past the motel and saw her car parked in front of the room. There must be other ways in which a cuckold husband discovers his wife's infidelity at least. Well, at least that's what you think. On the other hand, maybe not. Maybe there are only half a dozen ways a man comes to realize that his marriage has just come to a complete breakdown. I know that in my case, I was so in love with my wife for 10 whole years that it took a lightning bolt to make me understand what had been going on between my wife and her lover for the last 6 months. I just didn't have a clue the whole time. Shannon and I met in college in our sophomore year, and we were immediately attracted to each other. She had thick brown hair and blue eyes, a beautiful face, and a slender body with long legs. In short, she was perfect, at least for me. Besides, what made me fall head over heels in love was her personality. She was smart, cheerful, and funny. I could talk to her for hours about everything in the world. We were best friends, and after 3 months of living together, Shannon gave me her virginity in the back seat of my car parked outside the city's baseball stadium. From that moment on, I had no doubt that Shannon and I would be together forever, or, as it turned out now, for 10 years. My name is Stuart Gray, but everyone calls me Stu. I was born and raised in a small town in the Midwest. I am exactly 180 centimeters tall and weigh 85 kilograms. I am considered a pretty handsome man with brown eyes and sandy hair. I am a builder by profession. I have my own small company with a permanent staff of 5 people. We are mainly engaged in interior modernization for people who can afford it, and we are professionals in this business. Shannon teaches music at a local high school, and together we earn very well. We have a beautiful house, and since we are both in our early 30s, we plan to have children in the very near future. As I mentioned, the first 10 years of our marriage were wonderful. Our love life was amazing. No, I'm not going to exaggerate like some people and tell you that we did it twice a day, every day. We have it more like 3 times a week, but it has always been loving and sometimes ardent love. We hugged each other every night. It was an unbreakable rule, and every morning when I woke up next to Shannon, I was amazed at how beautiful she was, and how lucky I was to have her as my wife. I can honestly say that although I would rather live with her for the rest of my life, if I had to give my life for her, I would do it without hesitation. I probably really should have made that last statement in the past tense because suddenly something overwhelmed me, something so unexpected and emotionally overwhelming that I still can't say I've fully recovered from it. Since I'm a construction worker in the Midwest, most of my work falls in the spring, summer, and fall months. People just don't like it when the interior of their houses is being renovated when it's 5 degrees below zero outside and half a meter of snow on the ground. For this reason, the vacations that Shannon and I took usually fell on Christmas and New Year holidays, as well as spring break. In the summer, when I was busy making money, Shannon sometimes took a week off to visit her parents, went shopping with her 2 sisters, or took a lesson or 2 to keep her teaching skills up to date. Our favorite trip every winter was to some warm place, and in the winter of our destruction, we chose an all-inclusive resort in the Bahamas. 2 weeks in paradise for the 2 of us to reconnect body and spirit. However, I soon realized how wrong that thought was. First, I have to explain that before Shannon and I boarded the plane in Minneapolis, not only did I have no idea about her cheating, but I would also call you a liar and spit in your face if you dared to hint that something was wrong in our marriage. We were the perfect couple, so madly in love and deeply connected in every way that it felt like we were one person fused into 2 bodies. Our union was so strong that nothing on earth or in heaven could come between us. I guess I just forgot that there was also hell, and even though I didn't know it at the time, I was teetering on the edge, preparing to fall into the molten abyss. The first suspicion that something was wrong appeared to me at check-in at the Minneapolis International Airport. The queue was long. Many people were trying to switch from extreme cold to tropical warmth, and while Shannon and I were queuing to go through the scanners, I noticed that the person in the queue next to us was looking at Shannon. There is nothing unusual about this. My wife is an amazing woman, and men often give her slightly lascivious looks, but it looked different, as if he was trying to get her attention. I wanted to know more, so I pretended to look at my boarding pass, watching the guy out of the corner of my eye. His glances in her direction were furtive, to say the least, And then I caught Shannon's quick glance at him and a subtle wave of her hand as if she were talking. Not now. He smiled and nodded, and I almost lost my breakfast. I was stunned. It was then that I realized that these two knew each other. How well I wasn't sure, but that knowledge sent all kinds of warning flags. As we passed through security, I watched them both closely, and there was no further attempt to establish contact with either side. I know I became very quiet, but for some reason Shannon didn't seem to notice it. I think her thoughts were somewhere else. I was hoping that this man, whoever he was not on our plane, but as soon as we sat down and took our seats, I realized that I was mistaken. He was sitting in the aisle about 15 rows in front of us. Another thing that seemed strange to me was that Shannon decided to take an aisle seat in our row. It had never happened before. She always wanted to sit by the window, but not this time. I asked her what was wrong, as I had pre-booked a window seat for her, giving myself a middle seat, but she just said that her breakfast didn't agree with her, and she didn't want to bother anyone if she had to use the toilet. I asked the woman sitting in the aisle if she would mind taking a seat by the window, and when I explained to her about my wife's stomach problems, she readily agreed and moved over. I usually have no problems sleeping on the plane, and a long flight between Minneapolis and Miami would have given me the opportunity. But in my heightened state of anxiety, I could not fall asleep on this flight, although I was going to pretend. We put our things on the top shelf, and Shannon put her purse under the seat in front of her. When we got into the air, I took out a baseball cap, pulled it over my forehead, and pretended to fall asleep. I gave myself enough space to keep an eye on Shannon, and after 15 minutes she looked down at me. As soon as she was sure I was asleep, she got up and walked down the aisle to the toilets. I shifted in my chair so that I could see the entire aisle, and noticed that when she passed by the place occupied, as I now assumed by her acquaintances, she stretched out her hand, as if to calm down, and briefly touched the guy's shoulder. Another proof that there was something between them, and it wasn't just a coincidence. I noticed that they weren't looking at each other, and Shannon went to the bathroom. When she came out a few moments later, she looked directly at him, and he got up and walked towards her. When they met in the aisle, instead of one of them turning to the side so that the other could pass, they looked at each other and stopped for a moment. He put his hand on her waist, and she spoke to him for a second. That was all I needed to realize that these two had known each other for a while and were obviously close on some level. At the same time, it struck me that my wonderful marriage is in real danger and may well end. I was suddenly so depressed that I had to turn away from Shannon when she sat down and fastened her seatbelt. How could she do this to me? To us? How long has this been going on? Who is this person, and how far have they already gone in their relationship? For the rest of the flight, I tried to make some sense of everything I saw, and prayed that when we boarded our flight to Nassau, he wouldn't be there. But somehow I knew he would be. Unfortunately, I was right. As soon as Shannon and I boarded the plane, I saw that he was sitting 5 rows behind us. He was reading the logbook and didn't pay any attention to us when we took our seats. Shannon, who was obviously no longer suffering from stomach problems, took her usual place by the window. The flight to Nassau was uneventful, and after landing, we picked up our luggage, rented a car, and went to the resort. While I was driving, Shannon was tapping keys on her phone. "Who are you writing to?" "Oh, to my mother and sisters. I informed them that we had arrived." Yes, maybe, I thought, but I'd really like to see for myself. Isn't it strange that when suspicions begin, they snowball? Our room was beautiful, with a balcony overlooking the ocean and one of the pools. When we were unpacking, I realized that I had to make a statement to get my wife back. So I went up to Shannon, hugged her, and kissed her neck. "Do you understand how much I love you?" Shannon turned to face me and kissed me lightly on the lips. "I love you too, baby," she said. There was a strange light in her eyes, as if she wasn't there for me. I got goosebumps on my skin. "You know I'd never do anything to hurt you, right, Shannon?" She shuddered slightly. "I know this, Stu. And I know that you will never hurt me or our wonderful marriage," I told her. And she shuddered again, and I saw tears appear in her eyes. "Of course, Stu, you know I won't do that." But she couldn't look at me while she was talking. She just stared at the floor. Then I realized that I had most likely lost the battle. If she hadn't done it before, I now knew that she would soon give herself to another man. I let her go and quickly went to the bathroom, hoping I wouldn't lose her before I got there. I sat in the bathroom for a few minutes, coming to my senses and asking myself the same questions over and over again. How did this happen? What did I do to push her into the arms of another man? Why didn't I notice anything a few weeks or months ago? But most importantly, what can I do to stop her from completely destroying us, or is it too late? I washed my face and left the bathroom. Shannon was standing in the room with a strange expression on her face. "Oh my God, Stu, I just started my period and I didn't bring tampons with me." I was surprised. "I've just started my period, Stu. But you only had them a week ago. How could it start again?" "I don't know, it happens sometimes. Maybe it was caused by the excitement of the vacation. I need to go to the gift shop and buy tampons." And she left, closing the door behind her. My first thought was that maybe this was a good thing. This will slow down the romance between her and her boyfriend, whoever he is. My second thought was, wait a minute, this just doesn't make sense. In all the years we've lived together, this has never happened to her. She took birth control pills and her periods were always regular as clockwork. Then why would she make it up? If only, unless she thought that my period would stop me from insisting on love so that she could devote all her love and passion to her new man. That's how it should be, and if so, then she's not the woman I married. No one can be so treacherous and cruel. She must really hate me if she lets me plan and pay for this trip so she can cut me out of her life and give everything she has to a man I've never even met. I felt completely lost, as if I was losing my mind. Who was this woman whom I loved with all my heart for more than 10 years? Looking around the room, I saw that she had left her cell phone next to the TV. I turned it on, not knowing if she had changed the password, and found that no, another mistake on her part. I went to her messages and read the most recent ones from someone named Anthony Eisner. I pointed to the beginning of the correspondence, which began when we were driving to the resort in the car. Anthony: "Hi baby, oh my God, you look so cute, I can't wait to have you with me." Shannon: "You fool, you almost got us caught by Stu at the airport." Anthony: "I couldn't help it, Shan. I almost kissed you on the plane when we were standing in the aisle." Shannon: "Stu was sleeping soundly, so you could, but it might look bad to others. I really liked the way you squeezed my ass a little. A little preview of upcoming events? LOL, it's time to go, we're almost there." The conversation between them resumed after we found ourselves in our room at the resort. Anthony: "I'm in the lobby, are you here yet?" Shannon: "In my room. Stu's in the bathroom, he's acting weird." Anthony: "What's the difference? When will you leave Stu so I can have you all the time?" Shannon: "I've told you since the very first time we were together that I can't and won't do this, Tony. Stu is a wonderful husband. He loves me, cares for me, and gives me a life you can never live." Anthony: "I'm better than him anyway, and he's just using you." Shannon: "Oh my God, yeah, no one uses me like you do, baby, you know? Stu and I are getting ready to start our family with children, so the next 2 weeks are just for you, baby. I told Stu that I would stop taking birth control pills when we got home, but I actually stopped taking them almost 3 weeks ago. So now you have a chance to give me your child. If you can have a baby for me in the next 2 weeks, then we'll have a baby that Stu will raise, thinking it's his baby." Anthony: "You're such a nasty Shan, but I like it. I'll make a baby in your sweet tummy." Shannon: "God, you're making me wet. I can't wait to feel you inside me." Anthony: "But what about Stu? How do you know that his fluid won't outpace mine in the next 2 weeks?" Shannon: "Because he's not going to use me, stupid boy. I'm going to tell him that I've started my period again, and strangely enough, it's going to last the whole time we're on vacation." Anthony: "Are you sure he's going to buy this?" Shannon: "Of course, he loves me and knows that I will never lie to him. Besides, when we get home, I'll make it up to him." Anthony: "Damn, he's so stupid, such a loser." Shannon: "Stop calling him that, or you're going to lose." Anthony: "We both know you won't let that happen." Shannon: "That's true, but I still don't like you saying things like that about Stu. He's a good guy." Anthony: "Okay, I'll meet you in the lobby. I need to taste your lips, both pairs, but for now I'll settle for the ones on your face." Shannon: "And you're calling me nasty? You're getting exclusive use of my lips, at least the lower ones, for the next 2 weeks. Give me 5 minutes." I stood in complete shock, wanted to replace her phone with my own, and stopped. There is a possibility that I will be able to find a way to use these messages as evidence in a divorce. I started replacing her phone with mine, and then I thought, to hell with her. My phone has all my personal information. She started this mess. Let her try to find a way out, so I kept both of our phones. I thought it wouldn't take her long to realize that her phone was missing, but by then I'd be far away. I could feel the bile rising in my throat, causing me to vomit. I went to the window and looked out at the beautiful Caribbean Sea. 8 hours ago, I was the happiest person on earth, preparing for 2 weeks of romance under the tropical sun with the love of my life, my wife, my soulmate. And now my world has collapsed around me. I've never felt so alone, shocked, and angry in my life. I wanted to hurt them both, destroy them for making such a pathetic fool of me. Fortunately, the rational side of my brain gradually took over. Divorce was inevitable. There's no way I'm going to stay with the cheating fool who was my loving wife. But I wanted more. I wanted revenge. Looking out the window, I happened to look down at the pool, and there they stood, hugging tightly, immersed in a passionate kiss. Anthony lowered his hands to stroke Shannon's ass, and she lifted her right leg and pressed her crotch against his thigh. I almost threw up, but instead I took a deep breath and used my cell phone to film their actions. Probably while Shannon was unpacking, she didn't even bother to look out the window of our room, otherwise she would have noticed that the pool was in plain sight. I needed a plan, and I needed it fast, but my insides were cramping and my brain was blocked. Then it dawned on me that it was really simple. Shannon wanted to spend 2 weeks with her lover Anthony to have a baby, and I needed time to split our marriage in two. I'll give her 2 weeks and get the hell out of Dodge. I only unpacked a few items of clothing, so it didn't take me long to pack again. I looked out the window to make sure that the lovers were still sitting hugging, talking, and laughing, probably planning their first date on the island. I was going to make it easier for them. They could take his room or hers and spend as much time using as they wanted while I was here. As I headed for the door of the room, a thought occurred to me, and it made me smile. I pulled her underwear, nightgown, and dresses out of drawers and cupboards, dumped them all on the floor, and urinated on everything. Then I opened her suitcase, took out the jelly she had packed and dumped it on the pile, and then took all her perfumes, shampoos, and cosmetics, and quickly added their contents to the sticky porridge, just to add to the statement. Of course, she would have washed everything, but at least it would have kept her from dressing provocatively for her lover for a day or two, although I understood that they wanted to be together, so her ruined clothes wouldn't matter. Well, anyway, it made me feel a little better. When I got to the counter, I told the clerk that there was an emergency and I had to go home. She informed me that there would be no refund for these 2 weeks, and I told her that everything was fine. I will lose the money I paid in advance, but it was worth it to leave my wife and her lover. Besides, I'll just deduct that amount from her share of the divorce proceedings. After all, she's the reason the holidays turned to shit. I drove the rented car back to the airport, hoping to catch a plane anywhere. Fortunately, a plane was scheduled to leave for Orlando in 2 hours, and I could transfer to Minneapolis in just 90 minutes. I checked my bags, went through security, found a corner seat at the bar, and ordered a double scotch. It had been a little over an hour since I left the resort, and I knew that Shannon and her lover already knew that I had left. Still, I was a little surprised when Shannon's phone rang, which I had brought with me. I saw that the call came from an unknown number, so I ignored it. I switched to voicemail and listened to Shannon screaming almost hysterically. "Stu, what's going on? Are you crazy? Why did you ruin all my beautiful clothes? Call me dear, I'm terribly worried about you." No, Shannon. You're worried about yourself and your ruined vacation on a fucking holiday, I thought. I erased it, and 5 minutes later another call rang. "Stu, you're scaring me to death. Where are you, baby? I do not know what you think of me, but you are wrong. I will never do anything to hurt you. I love you, Stuart. Please, God, please call me." I erased the message again. After 3 more desperate calls, I sent her a text message. "You screwed up, Shannon, and you left your messages on the phone. You and Anthony will have a wonderful 2 weeks using and making a baby. When you return home, you will be filed for divorce, and Anthony will be sued for alienation of love. If I find out that he is working with you, I will sue the school district and fight to have you both fired on charges of violating morality. But hey, now you have each other, and Tony can use you over and over and get to all the places I've never been able to get to. I never thought that our love life was such a terrible disappointment for you." 10 minutes passed and I got a text from Shannon. "Oh God, please don't do this. I've never been disappointed in your love. Never. Stu, you are my world. It was all just a stupid mistake. I would never have brought it to an end. I'm sorry." 2 minutes later, another voice message, and I realized she was sobbing. "Please, baby, I'm begging you. I don't love Tony, I only love you. I'm going to die without you. And I'll spit on your grave," I thought. My message in response: "You can't love someone and do what you did to me. And now that I know you've been making love to Anthony for a long time, I don't want anything to do with you anymore. You lie and cheat without remorse. I don't even know who you are. Scammers like you and Tony deserve each other. Goodbye, Shannon. I never want to see or talk to you again. I hope you and your asshole lover have the same shitty life together. God knows you both deserve it. I clicked send and turned off the phone. When I moved into the garage, the house looked very different, probably colder or more lonely. There was simply no happiness left in him. It used to be a house, but now it was just a box of furniture. On the plane, I jotted down a list of things I needed to do, and one of them was to hand over the house to a realtor. The housing market was falling, but at least I could get out from under the payments. Shannon and I left for the Bahamas on Saturday, and now it was Sunday evening. A hell of a lot has happened in 36 hours. I'm going to start getting divorced tomorrow, and now I'm tired and just want to sleep. When I woke up on Monday morning, the sun was shining. My head was pounding and my mouth tasted like a cat had shat in my mouth. I trudged into the kitchen, made coffee, and turned on my cell phone. There were over 20 messages, all the same, begging for forgiveness, telling me that when she saw me leave her, she called Tony and told him she never wanted to see him again. She swore she never made love to him. It was all a big joke. He never really used her. She just liked to tease him and then come home to me to get her love. What kind of fool did she think I was? Not only did I hate her, but I also felt embarrassed for her. The last message on the phone was from Anthony, who told me that I could do whatever I wanted with my stupid wife, that she was making lousy love anyway, and he was glad to get rid of her. But if I try to do something to him, he'll make me regret it forever. I replied, "Listen, wipe your ass. I'll do whatever I want to you, and you'll sit and cry like a child. You are an inferior life form, not even human. You can't get your woman, so you have to hunt other people's wives. I hope you have eyes in the back of your head because you'll have to look over your shoulder for the rest of your miserable life. Oh, and by the way, your career is over, damn it. You will regret that you were born into the world." By 10:30, I had made an appointment with a divorce lawyer the next day, and by noon, all the little things like credit cards were canceled, and the checking and savings accounts were separated. I will take care of life, health insurance, and car insurance later. I didn't need to change the door locks, as they are all electronic, and all I had to do was set them up to work with a different key. I was ready for Shannon's return, although I wasn't sure if she would return to the house. As far as I knew, she could have stayed with Tony, even if it sounded like my departure had interfered with their childhood plans. If I were her, I would just stay at the resort for the remaining 2 weeks. Everything was paid for. At least she'll be able to come home with a good tan, regardless of whether she has Tony's baby in her belly. I didn't hear from Shannon or Tony anymore, and I slept restlessly from Monday to Tuesday. On Tuesday morning, I called the insurance companies and removed Shannon from all policies. She had her own health insurance, made at work, through the school district. Then I set about the agonizing task of collecting all of Shannon's clothes and personal belongings and putting them in the garage. I knew I had forgotten a lot of things, but she would have the opportunity to claim them later. On the same day, I paid a visit to my new lawyer. I told him the story, showed him the text messages and the video I shot. He sympathized with what Shannon had put me through, but since there were no children, adultery could not sway the court in my favor. A 50-50 division of all assets was the likely outcome, although I could keep any property my parents had given me before we got married. In other words, I screwed up. Well, whatever it takes, but running away from Shannon is necessary. It's worth it. That evening, as I was relaxing with 4 fingers of single malt whiskey in a glass, the home phone rang. I decided it was Shannon and thought I could get it over with and talk to her so I could tell her to go to hell, I replied. It was her sister Deborah, who lived half an hour away in St. Paul. "Stu, what the hell did you do?" "What do you mean, Deborah?" I was amazed at how calm I felt. "Your wife is in my guest room right now, and she's completely out of her mind. She can't stop crying. She looks like she's training to be homeless. And all I can get out of her is that you're divorcing her." "I'm not going to go into details, Deborah. If Shannon wants you to know what happened during our vacation, she can tell you. Suffice it to say that something happened that ruined our marriage, and I had no choice but to return home early, alone, and I'm going to divorce her." "Stu, you can't be serious. Shannon loves you with all her heart. She lives for you. You can be wrong." "I'm not wrong, Deborah, and I have a video of her actions to prove it. Please tell Shannon that most of her clothes and other things are packed in the garage, and she can pick them up when she's ready." "I just can't believe what you're telling me, Stu. You're all she's talking about, you and the baby you're going to have." "Well, her childhood plans suddenly changed when we arrived in the Bahamas. She was still planning to do it, just not with me. I've already said too much, Deborah. Everything else has to come from Shannon. Will she stay with you for a while? Yes, probably. I have a place for her. I just want you both to get through this and get back to your life together. That's not going to happen, Deborah. Shannon and I don't have a life together, and we never will again. Her choice was to leave us in the most humiliating way. Is it okay if I file her divorce papers with you? Oh, Stu, can't you wait for her? No, she didn't do anything for me, so I'm paying back the debt. When will she be served? I'll let you know in a couple of days before that happens. I'm sorry, Stu, for both of you. I thought you had a perfect marriage. I thought so too. But Shannon wanted something else. I hung up and went back to my whiskey. 3 days later, Shannon was handed the papers at her sister's house. She didn't even bother to hire her own lawyer. She agreed to the agreement and said she would sign them with only one condition, that she would be allowed to meet me face to face once to tell me everything. I didn't want to hear it, but if it was the fastest way to get us divorced, then I would have done it. We met in a private conference room at my lawyer's office on Wednesday afternoon 3 weeks later. I got there first, and when Shannon came in, I almost fainted. She looked so fragile and defeated and couldn't look me in the eye. I could say that the ordeal was really hard for her, but it was her fault, and it devastated me as much or even more than her. There was a box of tissues and a bottle of water in front of each of us, and I had no doubt that they would be used before the conversation was over. How are you, Shannon? She shrugged her shoulders. Oh, Stu, not so good. Unfortunately, I can't say I'm sorry, I told her, and she nodded. I know. She wiped her nose with a napkin and sniffed, still not looking at me. What did you want to talk about? She looked at me for a second, then lowered her head again. I wanted to explain everything, but I don't know how. Why don't you start from the beginning? Okay, Stu, I'll try. She took a deep breath and cleared her throat. Anthony and I met last summer when we were both at university. We had coffee a couple of times and had dinner once. We were just friends. We talked and flirted a lot, but that's it. I've always made it clear that I'm happily married. When the new school year began in September, I was surprised to learn that he had been transferred to my school as the new deputy principal. We had lunch a few times, and then after a long parental evening, he invited me to have a drink with him to relax. I knew I shouldn't do it, but I liked his company, so I agreed. Did anything happen between you that night? No. Well, yeah, sort of. We had a few drinks, and at one point Tony took my hand and told me that he really liked me. What did you say? I told him that I really like him too. Then he said he wanted to get to know me better, spend more time with me, be alone with me, just the two of us, somewhere alone. And what did you say to that? I told him that I love my husband and I can't do anything that could jeopardize my marriage. What did he say? He said we'd be careful and circumspect and you'd never have to know anything about it. He told me that it would be good for my self-esteem to see how much another man wants me, and he promised me that he would never do anything that would make me feel uncomfortable. He just wanted me to see how good it is to be loved by a man other than my husband. Did he tell you that he wants you both to do this? She shook her head. Yes. The way he held my hand and the look in his eyes and what he said made it clear that he wanted me. How did he want you? I'm not letting her off the hook. She looked at me again and there were tears in her eyes. He wanted to use me. And how did you feel about it? It should have made me angry, but it didn't. Instead, he turned me on and scared me at the same time. Tony is a handsome man, no better than you. But it was nice to know that another handsome man besides my husband wants me. Did what he said make you want him? She shuddered and then nodded. Yes. Did you go home with him? No, not that night. I told him I had to think it was a big step. He agreed, said he would wait as long as it took, and walked me to my car. I opened the car door, and before I could get in, he turned me around and kissed me. So what? I kissed him back. Then he sort of pushed me into the car, sat down next to me, and we kissed a little more. Is that all? She shook her head and shrugged her shoulders. No. He unbuttoned my blouse, put his hand under my bra, then he put his hand under my skirt, and I spread my legs. So you've done everything but love? She nodded. Yes, everything except love. How long has it been since he used you? The next day. It was the teacher's planning day, and he came to my room and thanked me for last night. I know I was embarrassed and felt guilty for what we did. but he told me that we really weren't cheating on you. He told me that he couldn't stop thinking about me and that he wanted me more than he had ever wanted any woman in his life. And he said that if I just gave myself to him once, he would never ask me to do anything again. And he swore that you'll never know. And what happened? I was hypnotized. I couldn't resist him, so I told him that I would go with him, but it would only be once. What made you go? I don't know, Stu. I just wanted to try another man one day. You and I have always been perfect together, but I have never been with another man, so I had no reason to compare. I know how stupid and selfish this sounds, but I'm trying to be honest with you. Then what happened next? We got to Tony's house and went straight to his bedroom. We kissed for a few minutes, and then he started undressing me. I remember shivering like I was cold. He took off my bra. So you were helping him at that moment? He was so gentle and romantic with me, Stu, and he wanted me so much that of course I helped him. I decided that I wanted Tony to use me. Did you have any thoughts about me while all this was going on? Not immediately, it came later. Were you wearing underwear? No, just a bra. I didn't go to work that morning, expecting my principal to scold me before I went home. Shannon looked at me and wiped the tears from her cheek with another napkin. I know how much I hurt you, Stu, and I know that my words only make the pain worse. I will never be able to put into words how stupid I feel and how sorry I am. I know this sounds like the stupidest thing I could say, but I love you more than life itself, and I would gladly die if it took away your pain. I was just looking at her. I felt that she really meant what she was saying, but it was too late. I'll never be able to get her back. Continue your story. After he stripped me naked, he just looked at me and said that I was the most beautiful woman he had ever seen, and that making love to me would be a religious experience for him. He said he felt he should say a prayer of thanks before using me. As corny as it sounds, I got wet. I knew right away that I would do whatever he asked me to do. He gently lowered me back onto the bed, all the while repeating how much he cared about me. Then he lifted and spread my legs and spent the next 10 or 15 minutes eating me. I probably didn't have a chance after that. Eh? Oh, no, please, you have to understand something, Stu. My love for you has never changed. Go on. Shannon shook her head and burst into tears for a moment. It's impossible to describe. Just before he entered me, I thought about you and asked myself why I was doing this. But when I felt him pushing his monster inside me, filling me and stretching me in a way I had never dreamed of, I stopped thinking about you and just focused on love, the one Tony gave me. I was in a daze all the way home. I remember how we made love that night, and you commented on how wet I was. I told you it was because of you, but it was actually Tony's liquid. I can't believe I let you believe that. I couldn't stay away from him. I don't know how to explain it. In many ways, I didn't even like Tony. He was cocky, selfish, and self-centered. But when he used me, I never felt anything like that. It was like an addiction. I have to say that you were good, although I never guessed. We were careful, at least at first. Some teachers at work began to suspect how we look at each other, constantly touch each other, spend so much time together, and leave together during lunch. It's so strange that I've never stopped loving you. It was like the two parts of my life were completely separate and had nothing to do with each other. How often did you make love? 2 or 3 times a week. We did it about as often. Yes, between the two of you, I made love almost every day, sometimes twice. Okay, so when did you and Tony decide that you would let me pay for our romantic island vacation and then take it away from me? About a week before we left. He wasn't even going to go, but he changed his mind at the last minute and decided that he couldn't stand being separated from me for 2 weeks. When he told me that, I just went crazy. What about me? How are you going to get around me? I decided to tell you that I started my period again so that you wouldn't want to make love to me. I knew that with your golf and deep-sea fishing, I would have plenty of opportunities to use Tony. Do you really think I'm stupid enough to buy into this story about your period? I thought you loved me so much that you'd believe everything I told you. And that's when you decided to let Tony get you pregnant? Even before I knew Tony was going to be there, I decided to stop taking the pills. I thought it would be so romantic if you got me pregnant while we were on vacation. Then, when Tony decided to come, I thought that letting him give me a baby would be a wonderful parting gift for him. I told him that 2 weeks in the Bahamas is the last time we'll be together. The novelty was fading, although the love was still incredible, and I wanted to dedicate the rest of my life to you. And then you both became stupid and careless. And I saw you, and it all exploded in front of your eyes. She nodded. Everything exploded. When I saw that you had destroyed all my underwear and beautiful dresses, and your clothes were gone, I realized that I had lost my world. I was devastated. I called Tony and told him what had happened, and he said that now we would have 2 weeks to have a baby. I was so angry that I threw him out of the room and said I never wanted to see him again. Did you make love to him before you returned to Minneapolis? Shannon's face paled noticeably, and I saw tears running down her cheeks. Yes, she whispered the night before I left the resort. His idea or yours? His, but I agreed. He said it was our parting love, but it went on all night. I don't even know how many times, but the next morning I could barely walk. So it's possible that your wish has come true and you're pregnant with Tony's baby. She visibly flinched, but nodded. I think I'll find out soon enough. And what will you do if you get pregnant? Go to Tony. Shannon shrugged and spoke softly. I don't know, Stu. I think I can handle it if it happens. You don't have to answer, but I'm just wondering, have you ever done something to him that you wouldn't do to me? Her face turned pale again, and she began to cry again. Yes, it really hurt, but he liked it because it was a part of me that you never had. Well, I think I've heard enough to last forever. Thanks for the humiliation, Shannon. She began to cry, covering her face with her hands. God, I'm so sorry, Stu. I didn't mean to hurt you. I was just stupid and it cost me everything. Not all of it, Shannon. You're still proud that 2 men would give anything to be with you. I've lost my marriage and my pride. Try to lose your whole world and have a giant Everest of humiliation fall on you, and then see what it feels like. Stu, do you think we can ever go beyond this? I couldn't help but chuckle. What do you think, Shannon? She tried to smile and shook her head negatively. The epilogue. The divorce became final almost 2 years ago. Shannon didn't get pregnant out of love with Tony in the Bahamas. Some people think I was a real ass because I filed a lawsuit against the school district where Shannon and Anthony worked. But I didn't care. Anthony was my wife's immediate superior and seduced her. I didn't get any money from the county, but it didn't matter. Both lovebirds lost their jobs and now work outside the field of education. Shannon works as a secretary at a dental clinic and Anthony sells carpets. I heard they moved in together, but something must have happened afterwards because she moved out after only 3 weeks. I know she's dating, but she hasn't found a steady lover yet. I went on. I've been dating different women for about a year, and now I've met a pretty sweet girl with a 3-year-old daughter. We've been dating for a few months now and talked to her about moving in together. My business is growing and life seems good again. Sometimes I run into Shannon, and when that happens, we say hello to each other and move on.